All right, you guys, welcome back to Trauma Saved My Life, where real people share how they turned unimaginable pain into a powerful purpose. Today's guest, I have Mackenzie Paul. She's a leukemia warrior whose story is unfolding in real time. At just 23, Mackenzie was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and she's had a stem cell transplant, battled pneumonia in the ICU, moved away from home for treatment, and faced relapse. And yet she continues to fight, to share, and to inspire. From her clinical trials to regaining hope through faith, Mackenzie is now a speaker, artist, and advocate whose voice reaches far beyond hospital walls. So let's welcome Mackenzie to the show. Hey,
Oh,
how's it going?
hi. Good. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad to have you, and you look great. You look amazing, and you look happy. Most of all, that's the
Hey,
most important thing.
thanks. I just woke up from a nap, so I'm very happy.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm sure it's much needed after everything you got going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to get right into some of the questions that I have for you. Um, the first couple don't really have a lot to do with what's going on, but I really want to know like a little bit about what your life was like growing up.
hmm Okay, yeah. So I grew up in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula.
Hmm.
So literally right next to Canada. It's a really rural town called Sault Ste. Marie. And
Hmm.
Um, I had a great upbringing, a great community with a lot of support. I played basketball growing up
Oh,
and
nice. What position did you play?
point guard. I'm really short.
Oh, nice. You got handles. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually met my husband where I'm from in the Sioux. He was my next door neighbor growing up.
Oh, awesome.
Um, but he played basketball too. He's 6'8", so he was a
Oh,
different position than
wow.
me. So there's a big height difference. But grew up in a really supportive community. Both played basketball. I stayed in my community to play college basketball at Lake Superior State University. It's a Division II school.
Hmm.
And the GLIAC conference, which is a really competitive conference for Division II basketball. And my husband moved downstate Michigan and played at Grand Valley State University. And then when COVID hit, we came back, the gyms were closed, and we started working out together because we were
Nice.
neighbors. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, and then we started dating and got married and moved to I moved down to Grand Rapids after that to start medical school
Okay.
and finished my first year of medical school, and then I was diagnosed with leukemia.
Right. Okay. Um, Well, really quick, I want to know. I'm sure you guys have played one-on-one before, right? Do you usually beat him, or does he usually beat you? How does that go?
He Before we started dating, I'm pretty sure he just had a crush on me and would let me beat him. But I'll beat him in like pig and stuff like that. So
Gotcha. Okay,
I'm a
gotcha.
better
Yeah,
shooter.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, point guards usually can shoot a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned being diagnosed. I'm curious. Before your diagnosis, did you ever know anyone personally that had cancer, or anyone that was going through something similar to what you've gone through?
Not really. I mean, we in my school actually, it's kind of a weird coincidence. It makes me wonder if something's going on in my little hometown, but there was a girl who was 3 years older than me who was diagnosed with AML when she was in high school. And then a
This was prior to
younger,
your diagnosis?
yes, prior. So it was when I was in high school.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then when I was older in high school, my junior year, there was a boy a year younger than me diagnosed with AML.
Mm,
So and I mean, I knew of them and it was sad for our community and we were all supportive of them, but
right.
that was really the closest I had been to cancer at that point, and I hadn't had any. I mean, my little cousin had leukemia when she was really little, but I like wasn't around it very often. So,
Mm-hmm. It's
um,
just something that you kind of heard about.
yeah, it was just something I heard about, and it was something that you're just like sad about, like it
Right.
didn't personally really affect me,
Yeah. And you,
like
you
it
guys ever
does
really,
now.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And you guys have a really small community. You were mentioning like the people in your high school, like you knew of them, but you didn't really know them personally.
Yeah, so our community has like a population of like 12,000 people, so
Oh,
like everyone kind of most people know each other or at least of
yeah,
each other, you know.
right. I get it. Yeah. That's a lot different than here where I'm at in Long Beach. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, in my area, you have a lot of people that have grown up together and, you kind of know a little bit of everybody, but I mean, we might have 12,000 people within like a 1 mile radius here. Like it's
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly.
So yeah, that's much
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so speaking of the people that you kind of knew of or heard about, um, how did seeing that kind of shape the way you thought about the illness as a whole, or the illness, or about healing back then? Did you really consider it at all, or what were
I
your
mean,
thoughts on it?
I always like felt sorry for them, felt like I wanted to help them in some way, like as far as like being a part of the smaller community and like getting together for fundraisers and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
I never imagined it would happen to me in
Right,
any way, shape, or form, especially, being an athlete growing up and
right.
being healthy and active and just, like, and then me wanting to go to medical school to, take care of people who are sick,
Hmm.
but never in a way thinking it would happen to me.
Right. It's kind of crazy how life works out that way. You hear about, I mean, I wasn't the healthiest person when I was diagnosed myself. It's something that, kind of um, got me into taking better care of myself, is going through that
Mhm.
and surviving that and knowing that I needed to be in the best physical, mental, spiritual position that I could be in just in case it ever came back. And I'm sure you're kind of experiencing that now where you're like, I just got to be as strong as possible in every way, shape, or form, to fight this
Exactly,
off, right?
for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy hearing about people, regardless of how healthy they are. I always tell people to get checked, do your screenings, check your blood, do everything you can because those little things that you ignore sometimes can be really big red flags, and you just don't notice
Yeah,
it because you've never gone through anything like that before. So, um,
right.
yeah, it's crazy how it works out. But I
I
want to
know.
go I want to go back to um, when you were diagnosed. Like, can you take us back to when you were first diagnosed and like what was going through your mind? You were 23 years old. It's so young, and
Yeah.
like you said, you're super healthy, or you were very healthy at that point. You were taking care of yourself. So, what was going
Mhm.
through your mind at that time?
Well, so yeah, I was 23. I had just started my second year of med school, and it was 2 months after I had just gotten married. So I got back from my honeymoon and I was starting my second year of med school. And I, the reason I even got like labs or anything done was I was in a patient's room during a clinical rotation and nothing was going on. There wasn't anything like triggering like vomit or blood or anything like that, or no procedures going on. And I started feeling dizzy and I ended up passing out in the patient's room. And
Wow.
I woke up to a bunch of nurses around me and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's weird. Like, I don't know what that's about." Like, I thought maybe I didn't eat enough or didn't sleep enough or I was just stressed from being a medical student. And then I went home and I was like, that's kind of weird. I don't think I should ignore that. And I
Hmm.
called my doctor and I was like, can you order some labs for me? Um, and I was just like thinking like it would just be like checking off like, oh, like my labs are always good. Like, so hopefully like,
Hmm.
go get labs done and they'd be fine. And I ended up getting labs. And when I opened up my labs through my chart, everything was like so wrong. Like
Hmm.
my white blood cells, my red blood cells, my platelets, they were all low. My white blood cells were actually critically low. So I had like no immune system essentially. And I immediately thought, just like looking at my labs, I was like, I have cancer. Like I just
Hmm.
knew it right then and
Oh, that gives
there.
me chills. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, it was awful and it was scary. And honestly, at that point, I probably should have just gone to the ER but I was kind of in denial, and everyone was like, "You're too young for cancer,"
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you'll get like maybe you just picked up a virus from your honeymoon in Mexico, or maybe you're deficient in some of these vitamins or whatever because you're just not taking care of yourself because you're stressed out because you're a medical
Mm-hmm.
student, whatever.
Right.
And um, so I got labs again, and they were still low. And then about a month later, I got my first bone marrow biopsy. And a couple days later, I came back from class, and my dad and stepmom, who lived 5 hours away at the time, knocked on my door, and because they had the results and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have them because they both worked at the hospital where I got them done in my hometown. And they I let them in, and they're like, it's leukemia. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was awful.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, yeah.
Mm,
That moment kind of just gives me chills. I can imagine going through that, and mine wasn't exactly like that, but I can't even fathom, the thoughts that were going through your head. I'm sure a million things popped through your head at that time. Um,
right.
those things that you're talking about, like those small, I mean, I guess passing out is not a small thing, but how you're like, oh, maybe it's just school, or I'm stressed, or I'm this, or I'm that. We make those excuses or those reasons to
Yeah.
not take things seriously sometimes, and I think that that's something that we need to start changing. When something feels wrong, we need to get checked as soon as possible. Like you said, maybe going to the ER. Not that it
Mhm.
necessarily would have changed anything, but just for others that are going out that are out there maybe going through something similar, get yourself checked, get yourself tested, scanned, screened,
Mhm.
everything, right?
For
um,
sure.
and you mentioned your blood test, or your labs that you did at that time. Had you done, or how long had it been prior to that point when you did your labs? Like how long? Yeah, what was the most recent labs that you had did before that, and were those completely normal, or had it been a while, or?
Yeah, it had been a while. It was about a year, I would say, like just doing an annual checkup. Um,
Hmm.
because I was always beforehand, pretty good at like going to the doctor like regularly. And
Hmm.
I remember even being diagnosed, like I was like looking at all my friends who are young in their like lower 20s, mid 20s, and they're like, yeah, I haven't gotten my labs done in years, or like I haven't
Right.
seen the doctor in years because like they,
Hmm.
nothing's wrong essentially. And I could have easily brushed off me just passing out and said whatever about it and waited
Right.
until it got a lot worse. But I was like, you guys, like, you need a primary care doctor, and you need to like at least get an annual checkup and labs and stuff like that. Cause I was like, the only symptom I had was passing out, and like
Yeah.
people can brush that off so easily.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially, I mean, you might have had other things going on, but you wouldn't attribute it to that, right? You wouldn't think that that's what's
Right.
going on at all. Like who in their at all, first of all, would think that they have cancer, but like you said, in your early 20s and you're a pretty healthy person, that wouldn't be your first thought if you start seeing these little red flags here and there.
Exactly. Yep.
Um, wow, yeah, but that was me. That was, I was in my 20s. Like I said, I wasn't in the best health. Um, I don't even think I had a PCP for most of my 20s. I was kind of just
Hmm.
floating through life, and I was just doing me basically. And you
Yeah,
wait until something really goes wrong, and then you're like, oh, I need to figure this out.
exactly. Yeah, that's how most people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back, I'm curious, what was the hardest moment you faced kind of up to this point during your treatment journey?
I think the hardest point, so my treatment, so when I was diagnosed, they did like a gene mutation panel on my leukemia, and it came back saying I was high risk for having a relapse
Hmm.
without having a stem cell transplant. So I got into remission when I was first admitted into the hospital, and then I got a stem cell transplant, and then I relapsed after that. So
So you,
then,
you had chemo at first?
Yeah, so
when
the
you're in
first
remission?
thing yeah, the first thing I did was chemo. It was like induction chemo that they called it 7 and 3. It's like the standard chemo regimen for people with leukemia or with AML like me.
Okay.
And that got me into remission, but with my mutation that they found, I needed a stem cell transplant because they basically said it's likely to come back if you don't get a stem cell transplant.
Hmm.
So I got a stem cell transplant, and then 6 months after that, relapsed. And then they said I would need another stem cell transplant. So when they said that, they put me back in the hospital for a month to try to get me back in remission because you need to be in remission to get a stem cell transplant.
Hmm.
Um, and when I was in the hospital, I ended up with pneumonia and in the ICU, and I couldn't breathe on my own. I had oxygen mask, and I couldn't I couldn't even like get up out of bed. Like I 4 people would have to get me out of bed to
Was it
like
due to exhaustion or weakness or?
because I couldn't breathe.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and weakness.
Okay. So you weren't getting
But
oxygen. Obviously, your muscles are pretty weak during that time, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And like the just so like laying there with with oxygen in my nose, I was like that was good, but anytime I would get up and move, my oxygen would drop a ton. So
Mm.
they would have to put high flow oxygen on me just to go to the bathroom, and that was like terrifying and exhausting because I couldn't breathe.
Hmm.
And then when I was done with that, I got out of the ICU and did a bone marrow biopsy to see the goal was for me to be in remission to get a second stem cell transplant. And I found out that I had not gotten in remission and my cancer cells actually tripled instead of going down. And then after that, I went on a like they said like we don't have an like you have to go on a clinical trial now because we're out of options basically. And so I got on a clinical trial and that didn't work at all. My cancer cells mutated against it and
Mm.
multiplied, and I couldn't like walk for more than 30 seconds. I couldn't stand long enough to shower. Like I had to have a shower chair, and like I just felt so um like I completely lost myself. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. I had no hope. I thought
Hmm.
I was going to die, and I just felt like I was waking up to basically, like sit on the couch and
Yeah.
like there's like I felt like there's no purpose for my life and I was just depressed and
Yeah.
finally I was like, this is just no way to live. Like
Yeah.
I I had to find something to make me
So,
want to get out of bed.
right. So in a sense, kind of like your spirit was almost kind of broken, right? You were defeated. You're
Yeah.
just, I mean, I can imagine going from balling people up, crossing everybody over as a point guard, to
Yeah.
to that, not even be able to stand up or go to the bathroom and take a shower and things like that. That's a complete 180. So,
Mhm.
I mean, seeing where you're at now is just it's such a good sign of faith and strength and resilience, and I'm really proud to see what you're going through and see how you've responded to that. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, just really quick, I wanted to touch on it one more time. When you were in the ICU with the pneumonia, what do you think kept you grounded during that time?
Um, I think, I'm a Christian and when I was first diagnosed, I've always believed in God, but when I was first diagnosed, it was kind of like a humbling moment where I was like, I can't do this alone, and I really turned to God.
Hmm.
Uh, so when I was in the ICU, I really I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I could barely talk because talking was exhausting too.
Hmm.
And
Right.
So I really just like when I first got there, I just closed my eyes and I remember just praying to God that I was like, God, please just help me get through this. Like, give me the
Hmm.
strength to get through this and let me, step outside of this hospital again someday and get back home.
Yeah.
And that's all I had was my faith. And,
Yeah, I mean, look at you now. I
you know,
mean, you're
yeah,
much stronger now. I mean, I know you're still fighting. I know you're still doing
yeah,
what you can, but you look great. You look like you're in much better spirits, at least than from what I'm hearing at that point in time. So, um,
thanks.
obviously, whatever you're doing is working, whether it's internal, external, whatever. It's all going your way. It looks like, and I'm really happy to
Hmm.
see that.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, I feel a lot better than I
Good.
did
Yeah.
then.
It's crazy, people don't realize how much lung power it takes, how much oxygen it takes just to speak. I didn't have the same issues with you where I didn't necessarily have, I wasn't able to breathe. My thing was, I had a tumor right in the middle of my chest, like literally right under my sternum. It was
Hmm.
a pretty nice sized tumor, and it was pressing up against my vagus nerve, and I guess that nerve kind of controls
Hmm.
a lot of stuff in our body.
Yep.
Um, Lo and behold, it also controls our vocal cords. So
Mhm.
one of my vocal cords was completely paralyzed. That's how I actually found out I had cancer. I woke up one day and I couldn't speak at all.
Wow.
I could talk with my lips would move, but as I'm speaking, there was no voice coming out because my vocal cords weren't touching or vibrating anymore. And
Hmm.
like when I would speak, again, your vocal cords kind of hold back the air, and then that vibration is kind of what creates your voice. But since one was completely paralyzed, I would speak and then I would say like three words, but no voice would come out. But all the air in my lungs would come out. So I would have to take deep breaths all the time. Like I literally could not speak. And that was for
Wow.
months.
That's
Um,
so scary.
yeah, not struggling to breathe, but also even it affected how I would eat because like when I would eat and
Hmm.
drink, your vocal cord is supposed to close and the food goes down into your esophagus, but mine was going down my trachea, down into my lungs. So I was almost drowning myself. I had to learn to like turn my head to the side and like make it go against the side that I could actually swallow food and water. So
Wow.
not exactly like yours, but very similar to, not being able to breathe and not being able to speak and losing that ability to speak. It really affects how you feel as a person, not being able to do those things.
Yeah, not being able to express yourself or, you know,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
How long were your vocal cords affected like that?
It was, so let me see, it was like late December of 2015, maybe just after Christmas or something like that. And it was literally through my entire diagnosis process. It was through the first several rounds of chemo. They didn't come back until maybe I did 6 rounds of chemo, and then they actually didn't know if my vocal cords would ever restore themselves because they're like, it's a nerve thing. Some doctors were saying like, yeah, your nerves will regenerate, and some were like, no, this is not gonna come back at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but probably about 6 to 7 months later, I think I was still on chemo. Maybe I was on my last round of chemo. Like once the tumor had shrunk enough to where it was no longer pressing against the nerve, I
Hmm.
slowly did regain my voice. There was a process during chemo, or maybe right before chemo, where they did a collagen injection where they tried to stick this needle down my throat, like all the way down my throat to my vocal cords to inject collagen into the vocal cord. Just,
Yeah.
the paralyzed one to bring it closer. I couldn't do that. I have a terrible gag reflex and it just wasn't comfortable at all. And then they tried
Yeah.
to poke it through my neck here and try to inject it that way. And it was very painful, very uncomfortable. And the doctor said he got some in there. And after a couple of days, my voice kind of came up a little bit. It was like a very bubbly, weird kind of voice. But then that faded away after a while, and then I went back to having no voice for another month or two. But luckily, after chemo, it did come back, and my vocal cord kind of works the same. It's just now it gets tired really quick. So like at the end of the day,
Mhm.
my voice will sound really hoarse sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, it's
thank
crazy.
God you're back. Yeah, that's an awful thing to go through, and I bet like
Yeah,
with the how you're talking about like swallowing, like I'm sure like it was scary to have like, increased risk of infection because you're going through chemo and then
right.
if your food's getting in your lungs, like I can't even
Yeah,
imagine.
it was pretty
Right?
terrible. It was
Yeah.
I guess it was something I got used to, but yeah, it definitely wasn't fun. And It was always a risk factor, like you said, no
Mhm.
immune system basically, and all that stuff going down there. It's just, it wasn't a good time. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely grateful, definitely um, thankful for how far I've come for sure. And seeing people like you that continue to fight and continue to show so much strength and resilience, that
Mhm.
motivates me so much to keep going. I know that I'm not necessarily in the fight like you are, but I still feel like, once you're healed, you're going to see as well. Like it's an everyday
Mhm.
struggle. You think about it every day, you're
For
thankful
sure.
every day, and you always feel like you're in the fight or at least preparing to fight again.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'm so happy that you're using your story to, bring light, I mean, to the situation and like allow others to share their story, but
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. I think any cancer diagnosis is so life changing, and
Right,
you just have to make the most of it like you're doing right now, and you know,
right.
talking about it and
And
bringing.
like you're doing, I mean, and like I said, you're still fighting, but you can
Mhm.
clearly see all the people that are inspired and motivated by what you're doing. So, kudos to you. I guess kudos to me as well. I have a hard time patting myself on the back sometimes, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
proud of
Pat
both of
yourself on the
us.
back. Yes, kudos to you too.
Um, really quick, I wanted to talk about you had shared with me that you had heard about another fighter that had passed, and that kind of gave you the push to fight again. So I'm curious, what did that moment feel like internally for you, especially now knowing what you're going through?
Yeah, it was definitely it was during the time where I had just gotten out of ICU, just found out that my chemo wasn't working, just found out that the clinical trial wasn't working. It was basically when I was just at the end of my rope, and I felt hopeless and I felt doomed, and I was like I'm just ready to be done with this. I didn't
Hmm.
want to fight anymore. And this woman reached out to me basically saying how her daughter was the same age as me, was also in grad school when she was diagnosed, also had a golden retriever like me, and had also relapsed after her stem cell transplant and was just not doing well and did not want to get a second stem cell transplant, was not feeling well like me. And I just related to that. Like I was like, we're in the same spot. Like I also don't feel strong enough to go through this again. And like I was like, she's more than welcome to reach out to me. And her mom was like, I'll let her know. Thank you so much. And then it was a couple of days after Christmas, and she hadn't reached out to me. And her mom messaged me, and she was sending me like all of these clinical trials and like all of these resources, and was basically saying like you need to keep fighting, like you need to get through this, like check out these trials, like show them to your doctor, like you got this, like I believe in you, like you got to keep fighting. And I was like, thank you for sharing these to me. And I said, how's your daughter doing? And she said, well, she passed a few days ago. And it just like broke my heart, because I don't know, I didn't know her personally, but I felt like I obviously related to her, and
Right, of
I
course.
just grieved so much for her for not knowing her. And I just felt so heartbroken for her family and for her mom, who was frantically messaging me saying like, you got to get through this, because, and then
Hmm.
at that moment I was like, I need to keep fighting. Like I want to live. I need to fight for my family. I need to fight for my husband. I need to fight for my friends, my community, and I need to fight for this mom who just lost her daughter. Like I was like, I'm gonna fight for me, and I'm gonna fight for you and your daughter, because like I just felt I was so heartbroken.
Right. Yeah.
And it's hard, it's sad that it took her life for me to open my eyes and want to fight again. But I'll never forget that feeling of grief. And I felt like I was like, I was just, it was just, it's just so sad. Like for anyone to lose their life, but for someone who's so young and has so much potential, and you just don't ever expect that. I was like, I need to keep fighting. I
Right.
can't
Yeah.
imagine, you know, putting my family through that, or even though it's not my fault. I mean, I didn't choose this, but
Of course,
I'm
no,
gonna
but
do everything I can to survive this.
yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, man, because I relate to that so much. Like it was like your poem that you put out there. Like you saw my response to that.
Mhm.
It's the stuff that you mentioned is so real, and almost none of it is stuff pertaining to you and how you feel or what you're going through.
Mhm.
It's all the people around us, the people that
Yeah.
love us, and um, doing it for those people can give you more strength sometimes than doing it for yourself. For me, it was my kids, it's my mom, my grandmother. They're sitting in the hospital room watching me go through it.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's funny how it works like that. Like you said, it's when there's a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't just affect the person going through it. The people that are surrounded them and that love them struggle just as much, if not maybe more sometimes. It's crazy how seeing
Yeah.
how tore up my mom was by it. And like you said, this girl's mom, and you, like the first thing you even said was imagining what her mom was going through and not wanting to put your mom through that or your husband or your
Mhm.
family. So um,
Yeah.
it's amazing how we can gain strength from others, and that's why it's so important for what you're doing and your my mantra project, which we'll get into in a bit,
Mhm.
and the stuff that I'm trying to do, and really just use other people's struggles, pain, or traumatic events to kind of gain strength, and it's something that really can work for us if you use it the right way. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
I totally agree with you.
Um, I'm curious, speaking of the friend that you lost, unfortunately, I'm curious how your faith began to shift or strengthen during that time.
Yeah, you know, I think going through cancer or just going through anything traumatic and hard, especially if, you have faith and want a relationship with God and or need that relationship to get through. I struggled. I was so like I felt angry with God, and
Hmm.
I felt guilty for feeling angry with God because I'm like, you're God, like you're
Right.
perfect. You can do anything. You can heal me. But like, what? Why? Like, why do I have to go through this? Are why did this young girl have to die? Why?
Hmm.
Just why? And you you know, you can ask God that, but like mm, we won't sometimes get the answers that we want to
Hmm.
why, but you just have to continue to have faith that um there's a reason for all of it. And I think um using my story and my voice is kind of my why.
Hmm.
Because I've had so many people reach out to me who are going through it and saying like, you have no idea how helpful it is that you're sharing, like the way you're sharing your story, or the way, because I've written poems like we were talking about and the one you were reacting to. um
Hmm.
that has been therapeutic to me too, but it's also like it shows our perspective of people who are fighting with cancer. And I think a lot of people like me before I had cancer who had no idea what it was like, or
Hmm.
um people who just don't understand how difficult it is, they can kind of see that perspective. um or and like we were like you mentioned, my mantra project with my art, being able to share other people's stories.
Hmm.
uh I think that's those things um are my why, I guess. And I think as hard as it is and as angry I can get with God, I'm like, okay, but some good is coming out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
no, a
I'm
lot
sure
of
I'm
good is coming out of it. You're helping a
yeah,
lot of people.
You too.
Thanks. No, yeah, I mean, just to add on to what you said, yeah, the why doesn't always it's almost never what we want to hear, right? It's almost never coming the way that we want to hear it. But seeing what you're going through and using those past events and current events that you're going through um, to continue to support, motivate, and inspire through the My Mantra project. I mean, that's clearly
Mhm,
your why, because there's a lot of
mhm,
people that are going to go through these things, but your personal journey is like a tree with many branches, and all those branches are separating out to people that are actually inspiring and motivating other people. So
mhm.
and if there may be more, you may sprout tons more trees and branches, but clearly this is part of your why.
Right.
And I do want to get into that because it's an amazing thing that you're doing. So
Thank you.
um yeah, it really touches me. It's very inspiring, and I'm
Thanks.
just so impressed. So can you tell us more about the My Mantra project? How art became a part of your healing, or
Yeah.
if it was always there for you, or just tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I started drawing like portraits of people when I was in high school, and it was really just like a requirement, I guess. Like, but I didn't know I could draw like that until I was forced to, and it just then from there it became a hobby, and it became um something like I would do for family members. Like I would draw portraits as gifts and stuff like that. And when I got to medical school, I kind of got away from drawing just because I was too busy.
Hmm.
And then when I got cancer, um, I had, all my family members saying, you should draw again. Like it'd probably be really therapeutic to you. And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It just had been a long time. And then so I got back into drawing, and I actually was in Houston visiting MD Anderson, and they have a Holocaust museum here. And there was a room of like portrait paintings of survivors, and then on the side of the portraits were their stories.
Hmm.
And it was just so moving to me to like see in their eyes like how much they had gone through and how much
Hmm.
they had overcome, and then like reading their stories next to it. So I was like, wow, that's like so inspiring. And then on my way back to Michigan, I was thinking, I was like, wow, it would be really incredible to draw portraits of, you know, cancer fighters, or just, people facing any trauma, like what you're doing, you're sharing people's stories, whether it's addiction or abuse or,
Hmm.
anything.
Right.
And um, to be able to draw a portrait of them, and then above their face write their mantra, whatever it is that got them through that hard time. And my mantra is I am the storm. So whenever like I'm having a hard time, I like tell myself, like I'm the storm, I'm the storm. And it goes
Hmm.
from I got it from TikTok. I heard like when I was first diagnosed, and it was saying the devil whispered in your ears, um you're not strong enough to withstand the storm. And then I whispered back, um in the name of Christ Jesus, I am the storm. What you sent to break me, God is using to make me more like Jesus. And so
Yeah.
that stuck with me. And then so getting back to my project, I thought it would be cool to like do time lapses of me drawing the fighter with their mantra, and then over the time lapse share their story and then post it on social
Hmm.
media and TikTok. So I've had a couple, and I haven't done it for a while just because I've been, busy taking care of myself.
Of course.
But
Yeah, you got a lot going on.
yeah, but it's something that definitely helped me feel, like I was doing something and I was helping people, and I had, some, like, it was part of my why.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No,
it
it's
was
definitely helping.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's been something I've loved doing, and I look forward to getting back to it once I'm less busy
Yeah.
and
Yeah, no,
feeling
I look forward to
better.
seeing a lot more. It's really an
Thanks.
amazing concept. It's an amazing idea. Um, it's like the new age thing as far as comparing to what you saw at the Holocaust Museum. They didn't have
Mhm.
TikTok and Instagram and everything back then.
Yeah,
Although if they did, I'm sure that stuff would get shared online.
right.
So yeah, that's your version of that, and it's really amazing because a lot of times, even if you go to memorial places or whatever, and you see names, they're just names or they're just pictures. So
Yeah.
understanding the story behind it can really help you get a grasp on who they were as people or what was going on or what they were thinking or what they were going through at the time, not just that they passed, just
For
it
sure.
really gives you some insight into what's really going on. And so um, that's another thing that makes your story so amazing. It's something that made me want to share my story as well because, I could
Mhm.
go outside and get hit by a bus for all we know. And, my
Yeah.
kids may never have known what kind of person I was or how I thought about these things or, what the entire story was. So for me, it was wanting to share and just create the history and just know that it's always going to be out there so that whether
Mhm.
it's 5 months from now or 5 years or 50 years from now, that people will go back and it'll be more than just a picture or more than just born on this day, died on this day. You get to see the life behind it. So
Absolutely.
it's definitely definitely an amazing thing you're doing, and
Thank
I encourage you to keep going. Obviously, when you have the time and when you are able to settle down and not have to
Mhm.
focus so much on taking care of yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I for sure will. Yeah.
Um, so you've spoken at public events, and you've shared your story pretty widely. Um, what does it mean for you to use your voice like while you're still in the fight?
Um, I think for me it's something I have to do. Um, because it's not only helpful for me and therapeutic to me to, have the support that I get when I do share my story, but also I know it helps others who aren't as comfortable sharing their story.
Hmm.
Um, Especially, with my age, because this past week I spoke at a Leukemia and Lymphoma Society event, and I had so many people come up to me and saying, it's so powerful to hear, someone like a young adult like you share their story, because a lot of the times it's usually, parents sharing their stories of their kids,
Hmm.
but they don't hear a lot about from, young adults, because there's not a lot of young adults who get cancer. It's not very
Right.
common. So they just, to like be able to give that perspective and how it's impacts people like me who maybe are, trying to pursue their career or go finish school, or who are recently getting married or trying to buy a
Hmm.
house. But, like, obviously for me, can't, I had to take a pause for school, and I had to move across the country with my husband
Hmm.
to get treatment. And it's just like, those aren't things most people my age have to do, but
Hmm.
it's just the reality of the situation. It's really unfortunate. So to bring light to it and to, you know, just be able to share that perspective
Yeah.
is really important to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, life is just getting started. I'm in my mid, well, almost late 30s now. So I
Mhm.
remember in my early 20s, I definitely wasn't thinking about fighting for my life. It was the
Yeah.
furthest thought from my mind. Life is literally just getting started. You just became an adult and you're starting to be more responsible for things and learning how life goes. So for you to have to be thrown into a literal fight for your life, um, yeah, yeah, it's just mind blowing. And if I didn't know your age, prior to speaking about you or hearing about your story, just hearing how you speak and your perception of life, I never would have guessed that you're in your early 20s. It's definitely you have the wisdom of somebody that's a few decades older. But
Thanks.
Trauma sometimes does that to you, right? Like when you got to go through these things, you're forced to learn on the job or on the fly. You just figure it out. I know everybody doesn't, but obviously you're a warrior, you're a survivor, you're somebody that is going to figure things out, and you've been doing
Mhm.
great so far. So um,
Mhm.
definitely, it's definitely inspiring to see. Um, I hate referring to your age like that, but to see such a young person, fight through
Oh,
like that and have that sort of perception.
thank you.
Um,
Yeah, definitely have learned the important things in life at a very young age.
right. Yeah. Well, that just means you're gonna really get to enjoy the later years of your life because you've already kind of crammed all this survival stuff, the survival instincts and everything, and very early. So when you're in your 30s and 40s, you're gonna be living it up. You'll be in the clubs
Yeah,
partying with all the 20-year-olds.
exactly. They're gonna be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm gonna be like, "I'm living, baby."
Right. Yeah. They have no idea.
Yep.
Um, you did mention that people have kind of shared with you, some of the stuff that they've gone through, and I'm curious what people have shared with you, about how your story has impacted them, whether it's somebody going through it or whether it's just somebody that's just curious about your story and is kind of inspired. How has that impacted them, or what they've shared with you, how it's impacted them?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of just you know, people trying to relate to someone. Um, and I think that's where a lot of the people I've had message me are just saying, like I'm 20 something years old. I was just diagnosed and I have to get a stem cell transplant and like what is it like? Like how did you do it? Like how did you get through it? Like just I think it's a lot of it is because, like for me, I was fortunate because I was a medical student, so I had a lot of medical knowledge and but like for someone who doesn't and to just be thrown into this world, it's like these doctors are speaking a foreign language
Mm-hmm.
basically. And it's scary. You're being told like you have a life-threatening illness and you have to go through X, Y, and Z to overcome it. But, and so I think for me, it's a lot of people I'm talking to are just trying to be able to get answers um, that are hard to find, when you don't really understand fully, I guess, like medically,
Right.
it's hard to understand and navigate things,
Right.
but also just being able to like relate to someone that is going through what you're going through because I'm sure like you have a lot of thoughts and fears that you may be feeling that you don't want to talk about with your friends and family because you don't want them to know you're scared. You want them to think you're strong and you're brave
Mm-hmm.
and you're ready to get through it, but it's obviously scary. So
Right.
I think it's helpful to reach out to people who are going through the same thing as you and it's been helpful to me too. I've made a couple of friends who are going through the same thing as me and who I'm praying for, and I know that they're praying for me. And I know when I'm having a hard day, I can tell them what I'm going through, and they'll understand, and they can do the same for me. So that's the beauty of social media is to be able to build that
Mm-hmm.
community
Right.
because otherwise, like, there's no one I know from my hometown right now who's in their 20s going through something like this that I could
Right.
relate to. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're completely right. I completely agree with that. Um, Yeah, I especially me being a dad at the time when I was diagnosed, I have to exude strength and confidence and all that, and never wanted to show some of the stuff that was really going on in my head. I mean, I
Yeah.
felt pretty good. I felt pretty confident, but of course, there's always those moments of what if I don't make it? What if worst comes to worst? And like we talked about earlier, thinking about, I mean, for me, I literally like kind of envisioned my funeral and seeing my mom and my grandma there. Um,
Mhm.
but of course, when we're all together in the hospital room or we're all, hanging out or whatever, I'm smiling, I'm jovial, I'm confident and doing all that. But I mean, I shed so many tears in the shower when I was by myself, and just
Yeah.
I think you even mentioned that. I think you referred to your husband maybe, but coming out of the bathroom, it's just like just let me wipe everything away and just put the happy face back on, put the strong face
Exactly.
back on, and that's a real thing, and a lot of people don't really understand that unless you're going through it. So I
Yeah.
completely agree, completely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so we're almost done here. I just got a couple more questions for you.
Mhm.
I really want to know, um, what has cancer taught you about what really matters in life?
Mhm. Um, I think the biggest thing I've learned is like what matters in life is the people around you and like, being kind and loving others and being helpful to others and, not focusing on worldly things like achievements and status and money because, that was a really hard thing for me when I got cancer is I like med school was taken from me. So before that I was like I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to make all this money someday and I'm going to be really smart and like just like the ego like that I was chasing. But when when everything is taken from you and all even in your health is taken from you and all you're left with is people who are just there for you and love you and care for you and just want to make you smile even through the hardest time of your life. That's all I care about now.
Hmm.
And I also care about um experiences and like when I'm done with this, I want to see the world and I want to learn history and I want to travel and
Yeah.
I want to start a family and like there are things that I'm passionate about that I think about like when I'm done with this, like I'd like to pursue my career in, maybe advocacy or something like that and helping people that way.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's really just about family and
Hmm.
people you love.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Like you said, when everything is taken from you, I mean, e- especially your health, I mean, really the only thing you want is to be alive, to be healthy, to
Yeah.
be able to enjoy things with your loved ones. Those are the things that truly matter. And it sounds so cliche because I've been hearing it forever. We all hear it all the time, but
Mhm.
when it really happens to you, you really understand it a lot more clearly. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it is for you, but the amount of people that you know versus the amount of people that care, that really care about you and are really there
Mhm.
for you, it really kind of opens your eyes to who the people are that you're important to and who you're important to and who's important to you. I
For
don't know if I
sure.
said that right, but you
Yeah,
get
no,
what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. Yep.
um, the people that really care about you and the people that you should be caring about as well, and reciprocating that same sort of love and attention and care to. It's a very small group compared to how many people we're connected to and how many people we actually know. Um,
Right.
but yeah, all that ego stuff, of course we need money, of course we need jobs, of course we need all these things, and those things, have some sort of importance in the way that society is built and the way that we live our lives. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, being alive trumps all of that, and having people around you that truly love you is much more important than all those things. So I
Absolutely.
completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Uh,
it's a good lesson. I mean, I guess that's one thing of getting having cancer at such a young age is like to be able to learn that is so valuable.
hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, if I'm thankful for anything, it's that.
Yeah, that's one of probably quite a few silver linings that you do have is it's unfortunate that this happened to you so young, but the fact that you're going to have so much more life ahead of you to apply all of this knowledge and all of these things that you've
Mhm.
gained is really a blessing because some people never learn these things. Some people never
Yeah.
understand it. And some people take decades after decades, of living life trying to chase that ego and fulfill that ego.
Mhm.
And I'm just glad that you've been able to experience the true awakening, I guess we can call it. I don't know how you want to refer to it, but yeah, it's just
Right.
that's what life is about is pursuing love and happiness and health.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
So my last question I have for you is if someone is watching this podcast, listening to you, and they're newly diagnosed or struggling, what message would you want to give to them today?
Um, I would say, you know, just don't lose hope and every single day find something to be grateful for and find something to fight for because I think that's what gives us the strength to get through this is hope and
Hmm.
putting your faith into good things, like your future, your family, your friends, God. And yeah, I think I truly believe that this most a big part of this battle is just your mindset and so to stay positive and stay hopeful and do what you can with the little energy you might have, it'll be worth it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Yeah. Anybody out
Mhm.
there going through it, just know that you can get through it, regardless of how hard it may seem sometimes. And it feels impossible. It feels like it's not worth it. It feels like the fight is never going to end. Just keep fighting. You'll just keep
Mhm.
going. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe you're just too far back in the tunnel to see it, and you got a big fight ahead of you, but it's worth fighting for. Trust and believe it's worth fighting for. I know you're in the fight right now. I'm sure you can see the
Mhm.
light at the end of the tunnel. It's there. You just got to keep going,
Mhm.
keep chugging along, and you're gonna
Yeah.
make it. You're gonna be
Thank
fine.
you. Thank you.
With your
Yes.
mindset, you have it all under control. You just got to trust the process at this point.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I really want to thank you for coming on my podcast. I know, I don't have a huge following or anything like that, and so I just want to reach as many people as possible. I appreciate you taking the time and really
Mhm.
giving me some honest, authentic answers to everything. It really
Yeah.
means a lot to me, and I'm sure will inspire somebody or motivate somebody. I really can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you also for doing what you're doing. I know it helps people a lot and it helps me too. So thank you for letting me share my story and keep doing what you're doing because it's awesome.
Of course. Thank you so much. That really does mean a lot to me.
Mhm.
Did you have any or did you want to drop your handles, your screen names, or anything like that? Anything you want to share, how people can find you or find more about your My Mantra project or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Kenzie Paul 3, KenZiePaul 3. And from there on my Instagram, you can actually in my bio, I have my handles for my art pages. So I
Okay.
have Paul Paul's portraits. That's just my all of my artwork. And then I also have at my mantra dot project, which is the my mantra project artwork
Okay.
and stories. So
Yeah, and we'll be sure to put those up on the screen and put some links in the description of the video so people can get right to it.
cool.
Um,
Thank
yeah.
you.
No, thank you again. And
Mhm.
so just to close, I just want to say, that Mackenzie is living proof that you can stand in your truth even when you're in the middle of the storm. Her faith, her voice, and her art have already made waves, and she's just getting started. And so if this story moved you at all, drop a comment below, maybe tag somebody who needs to hear this message. This is Trauma Saved My Life, and until next time, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.